So, penultimate panel. Again, if you've been with us for the whole festival, thank you. And if you're here, just as we draw to the end of it again, it's great to see you. And this panel is, of the four that I've moderated, this has been the one that has made me tingle the most. And I think it's because of the elements and the factors and the characters that our two authors bring to us. There is, of course, that magical, fantastical element. Furthest away from me, Ben Aaronovitch. Yeah, thank you for teaching me the real pronunciation. Thank you, appreciate that. Ben, thank you for your series. Thank you for transporting us to maybe a familiar place, but with so many different facets to it, that those layers back in time. It really is a journey beyond. It's beautiful, thank you. And next to me, Abi Barden, in brackets, aka G.B. Williams, a dual writer. Can I also tell them that you write crime fiction?
You certainly can.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about your fantasy series, which contains crime, which contains some delicious crimes. But I know we're going to say it later, but I really want to say again that you, as the powerhouse behind this festival, and
dog's body, you mean?
I really don't. You above and beyond the Call of Duty, you've been immense, and I really want to thank you. But
You're commenting on my weight.
No, not at all. But we're here to talk about your writing.
We are.
Which is most important. But I'd like to put a question to both of you to start with, and all about the elements that you chose to bring together and that you continue to develop. I wonder why, Ben, if we start with you. I mean, because I know that you've written for Doctor Who, but why not just write a good old police procedural?
It's all Dylan Thomas's fault.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just thinking that on the train over, actually. I was thinking, where did this come from? Because people ask this question a lot. And the standard answer is that I like fantasy and I like science fiction, I like crime, and I'm too lazy to write two books. And I've used that answer quite a lot, but it's not really true, obviously. I don't know, I was brought up on Undermilk Wood. Uh-huh. Okay, we had the original record with Burton reading it and everything.
Beautiful.
And I think I listened to it from quite a young age, and I think it just sank into my brain. And it's that element of the fantastical impinging upon the real world. It's like descriptions of the dreams and in the beginning part, and things like Diebred with his two wives and things like that. And I don't know, just like the lives of the poisoners. I always remember that. It's like lives of the great saints, dear. Here's your arsenic. And I've always liked the fantastic. I've always liked the fantastic and the holding up the fantastic as a mirror to the real. And I didn't really think about it until I was on my way here. Mm-hmm. But I think that's actually the impulse. So I'm going to blame Dylan Thomas because he's dead and can't do anything about it.
I think it's a beautiful person thing to blame. It's really good. And not do the thing of, because I didn't want to separate things. I'm glad it was Dylan Thomas that got you on this road.
Yeah, I think so. And the fact that I was too lazy to write two books.
Well, that's the first reason I've ever been given to actually read Dylan Thomas.
You've never read any Dylan Thomas?
Yeah, I'm sorry, do not expel me from Wales, because I do live here, but I've never read Dylan Thomas. Sorry.
Oh, no.
But being English, you didn't get brought up on that.
Bloody did.
I didn't.
I think maybe you were too young. Some of us had to learn to recite.
Yeah, it was like in the 60s. It was on the curriculum.
Yeah, I'm a 60s baby in 1 month and 1 day. So.
We were, mind you, I had an Irish English teacher and a Scottish history teacher, and I was that kind of school I went to. Yeah. So we were a pretty eclectic bunch. And my mum loves Wales, you see. She wasn't Welsh, but she loved Wales. That's why I'm named after Dylan Thomas. So. It was not really that surprising. I had the record. A lot of Greek music for some reason. So Greek music and with Dylan Thomas.
Well. That's really... Thank you, Abi. I'm going to call you Abi. That's
all right. What you want, dear.
In character, yeah. But you do write two series. You do, in a way, separate procedural or investigation traditional from
I do.
from the fantasy. Why do that?
Because there is an element to fantasy that you can't do in contemporary crime. As much as I do love my contemporary crime characters, part of it was I don't have to research when I write steampunk because I'm lazy. I'm sorry, but if I can get out of having to do the research, I will. Which, actually, my husband will tell you is not true because I do spend hours and hours researching things for my books. But there was a story in me that had to be told, and I had this whole idea of one of the main characters is called Maker. And Maker is basically Mr. Darcy, that Mr. Darcy in a cravat. And he came to me fully formed and said, write me. So I did. And it was awful. And it was contemporary. So I took him back 200 years and it worked perfectly. And then Amethyst came to mind. And I have a literal jewel box of a family. And suddenly it was like, well, what if there's another side to Amethyst that we don't know about? And what if, aside from, being an actually intelligent woman and a capable woman in a society where she's not allowed to be intelligent or capable, what else could she do? And then suddenly the whole science of Aether and the non-scientific part of the science came to me. I thought, yep, that's what I've got to write. And then I just had to write it. Do you get that? You just got to write things.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to now do a story, at least one story with a city with kind of like this curve with a waterfront and a row of what seem to be decaying houses along the front of it, kind of alarmingly, since I'm in one of the hotels.
Oh, I can't imagine what you got.
It's all held up with scaffolding. I'm thinking, is this sinking into the sea? Is this what's happening on the seafront here? Because like everywhere is held up by scaffolding.
No, it's literally getting battered. We were here 4 or 5 weeks ago, and that whole prom was covered in gravel. You couldn't walk along it very well because it was actually quite painful to walk along.
Oh.
And that's what happens. The sea here, beautiful. You can't beat Cardigan Bay for a nice sea. But when it gets rough, it gets really rough. That's why we now have a round bandstand where we used to have a nice oblong one with a red roof because it got wiped out in a storm.
Oh, okay. See, now I want to write a story about that.
And
There we go.
The one with the scaffold, I think that got burned down for some reason.
Okay, because there's like a hole. There's also a hole. You go along like house, hole. I just thought, well, that's a story.
So we should watch out for.
Well, I mean, I have one of these ideas every other 5 minutes. That's my main problem, is not that I just don't write fast enough to kind of keep up with the ideas. That's always been my problem.
Do you ever as these ideas pop away, and I know you say that ideas, they need to be written, they ask to be written, but do you have a sort of like a sifting system whereby it's like you've been around long enough, I'm not going to develop you?
No.
Do you
No,
let things...
I have a kind of, I think of it as a garden shed, right? And I open the door and I fling the thing in, and then occasionally when I need something, I go in there and I kind of rummage through, things, and you think, where the hell did I buy this, and what is it for? And sometimes you just pull out ideas and go, oh, that's a really good idea. Why did I throw that in the garden shed? And then you run away with it. So I suspect this town is going to go into the garden shed for a bit, until I need a kind of a town that's at war with the sea. I think then it'll come popping out again.
I find as well that there are things that I have sifted out because I know I don't know enough to do them justice.
Yes, you also have to do research and stuff.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to do something in Wales, which has got like a kind of mythology that goes back a million, billions of years. You can't just go and go, I'll just do what I like. Ha! You have to do a bit of research.
Definitely,
or a lot of research.
Yeah. Ben, can I ask you about Peter, your detective? Is that all right, Peter Grant?
Yeah.
And Apprentice Wizards. I love when he sets off, he's an apprentice wizard. Greater into his craft now, greater in his magic. But how did Peter, talking about characters appear, how did Peter appear to you?
Well, Peter was originally a woman when it was a TV series, because I would have just lent quite heavily on the actress. So you can do that in a TV series. You can make, because she's a woman from Jamaican parents. You just cast someone who knows what that's like, and they can do all the hard work. But when you're actually writing a first-person character, you have to find some stuff out. So I made him a guy, and I kind of just like noodled him around for a bit until he just popped up. His whole thing with his mum and his dad and the background and the jazz and everything, all that just pulled up. I mean, he's not based on, but he is adjacent to a lot of people I grew up with, you see. So I had a lot of confidence about writing him and his background because I knew people like that. I knew people from that kind of background, various elements of that background. And so therefore, I wasn't worried about writing him. I could do him without research. It's quite important when you're writing a book while doing a full-time job. Because you don't have time to do research or anything else, really. So you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you don't have time to go, and I was just on the cusp of the internet revolution. It's much easier now than it was when I started. And he just kind of arrived. And I wrote the first 4 pages of Rivers of London as it stands, pretty much as it stands now. And I thought, fuck me, this will sell. And then it just really became a question of writing 96,000 words.
Behind that, yeah.
And which is the bit that separates you, writers from non-writers, is the 96,000 words. You have to just sit down and keep going through the periods where you go, I hate this stuff.
But you were right about this will sell, and not only did those first 4 pages sell, but the series that has developed and that people devour.
But when I say this will sell, I meant like, I had a very specific idea of who it would sell to. I thought I can get an agent on this and I will get a publishing deal. But we had a very clear idea, me, the publishers, my agent, we knew exactly who was going to buy this book, and we were completely wrong in every respect, you see. We were very clear that this book was going to sell to, people like me, right? Basically people who go into the Waterstones and go straight to the science fiction shelves to see if there's any books that have been published in science fiction. And then, when we've exhausted the possibility of science fiction, slowly maybe go to crime, and then general fiction if we absolutely have to. And that was going to be the audience that we were going to sell to. I mean, I was very clear about this. I was going to be a middle-list author. I knew I wasn't going to be able to give up the day job, everything. And the first inkling that I had that this was going horribly wrong in a good way was when I went to a friend who I'd given a copy of the book to, and I said, are you enjoying the book? He said, I can't tell you because my mum has stolen the book and she won't give it back. And I was like, your mum? She's not my audience. and so, and this caught everyone by surprise. The people like the publicity people and the Orion, this caused them tremendous trouble because they like a demographic.
Yeah.
They like a demographic. There wasn't any demographic. When they did research, they found I'm kind of evenly spread, like mud, over the kind of like the demographics. There's apparently, a slight, almost statistically insignificant increase in the numbers of pregnant women and teenagers. And I'm just hoping there's not an overlap on
Between them,
But that's it. And there's no demographic. They can't sell it to Winchester woman or Mondeo driving man or something. And so that has caused them we've had endless discussions about how to market the books.
That's really interesting, because I'm always told, know who your audience are. I've got no idea.
No, you don't know who your audience is.
I've got no clue who I sell to.
Apart from the chair, which we've discussed, I have 3 pieces of advice for writers: is send it to everybody because they don't know whether they're going to like it until they've read it. And 2, buy yourself a good chair because you're going to spend a lot of time in it. And 3, you cannot know who's going to like your book. You can only write the book you like and hope that other people want to read it. That is my 3 pieces of advice.
Great advice. Great advice. I was wondering, Abi, so do you have that chair at home? I
do, actually.
Did you invest in the good chair?
Yep, I absolutely did. But not only that, I invested in the good cushion. Because I actually do have a bad back. About 15 years ago probably now, I'd seriously damaged my back. I was picking up a load of tile boards when I worked for a tiling company. I twisted and I did it wrong. And I tore all the muscles down my back. I was off work for a good few months. Longest period of time I've ever not worked until I got made redundant in COVID, which was yes. But yeah, because I have a bad back, I have to be careful with what, which is why, if anybody saw, there is a cushion here, which I'm very, very pleased about because it's supporting my back. So yes, that is a fantastic bit of advice. Make sure you get a decent chair.
To have the chair.
I mean, my chair is the most expensive thing in my house. It really is.
I've not got that good a chair.
No, I have to because I'm huge and fat and have to have an expensive chair because it has to not only support me, it has to sustain itself. Because I've had cheaper chairs and they keep breaking. I had to replace them like every year or so. I was having to replace these chairs. And I don't know what happens. They just break after a year. And they said, it's because you're huge. Get a bigger, better chair. So I went to a specialist chair shop. You get actually such a thing as a specialist chair shop. I went to a specialist chair shop and they sat me in a series of chairs until they found one that suited me, and it was ridiculously expensive. And it's the only thing that's itemised on my insurance at home because everything else is like books.
I actually got told in work that I was complaining about my back. This is after I changed jobs. How I had an office job, and I said, I really have a bad back and I'm causing me pain. I need a proper chair. And then the health and safety guy said, but you're over 14 stone. We don't do chairs for you. I thought, oh, thanks. I'm too fat to
Did you
be on a
step on his
chair.
foot?
Yes, feel that 14 stone.
Sorry, did you say something?
So, Abi, I won't ask for a definition of steampunk because I know don't
Everybody
do it.
asks
I know.
for the definition
So
of
I've got where history and fantasy collide with technology.
Yes.
Would you agree with that definition?
Yes, the only thing I would say was missing from that is it's generally Victoriana.
Okay, so it has a specific time.
Yes, because if you go
Steampunk
later than
does.
that, it's diesel punk.
Yeah.
Ah,
But if you
which
go
appeals
earlier,
to someone like me. I much prefer the
but
sound
if
of
you
diesel
go
punk.
earlier, you get powder punk.
Yes. Or,
You can start with powder punk, which is Georgian-ish.
Yeah, Georgian.
Stream through to steampunk, which is Victoriana, and then go to the near future, which is diesel punk, and then go to the far future, which is cyberpunk.
Yeah. Or you can do what was it, rocket punk, which is retro science fiction, where everything's like in the 1950s, and so everything has to be hand cranked.
Yeah, so if you think Flash Gordon, if you were writing that today,
Sorry,
that's
yeah.
rocket.
So that's rocket punk. Do you know? Come for the fiction and be taught. This is very, very good. But tell me, of the history, fantasy, and technology, yeah, do you feel drawn more to one of those strands than another, or do you weave happily?
I'm quite happy to weave. I have to say, I'm going to have to take this hat off because it's actually becoming painful. The reason for the hat, by the way, is a lady who isn't here, another committee member said, you can't be Gail when you're on the stage, you have to be Abi, so you've got to change clothes. And I thought, I'll put my hat on. That hat, by the way, has got more photographs than I do because it's on the cover of the 5 books of Aether Chronicles. Sorry, it's really painful to wear. No, I find that they actually have equal importance, but I think the real importance is, have you got the people right? And I don't care what genre you're writing, what year, if you've not got your people right, that doesn't work.
Voice. Voice is really, really important. You can
Yeah.
get away with so much if you've got a good voice.
That's why I'm always impressed you write first person, because it's the one thing I cannot do.
I didn't do it before. Peter was my first person character, and I was a bit nervous about it until I wrote those 4 pages, and then I went, so I got hold of something hot, quick.
Yes.
Monetize it.
That's what we all want to do.
Great. Ben, you mentioned how with, as time moves on, that you started writing, just as technology was, but to think of technology in general, because in reading the series and reading your work, there's an awful lot of technology and gadgets involved. And I just wondered to what extent, the extent of your research for these terrestrial elements before we move beyond. How much research have you done into technology?
Well, the advantage is after you've written like 4 books, people start sending you emails saying, well, I think you'll find that in the event of this operation, there would be... And then you immediately make them your advisor because they can't escape. They've walked into your trap. So I now have just loads of people that I will say things, petroleum, go! And I make them read passages, and they correct it. So that's very useful for the police procedural, particularly, because the Metropolitan Police reorganise on a rolling 6-month basis. And so therefore, not only do you have to know when the book is set, as to whether you're talking about what command structure you're talking about for boroughs or something like that. And so I have advisors for that now. But the principle is basically the more realistic the mundane, the more fun it is to throw the magic in and mess everything up. But also, in a funny way, it sells the magic.
Yeah.
So the more realistic Peter's policing is, the more realistic the magic is, in a weird way.
Because my next question was going to be, how do you make a decision of, and this will now go into the magical? Is there a sort of a balance, a formula, so that you don't overdo one aspect more than another?
I don't really think about it, to be honest. It's all
It's organic.
It's all part of the parcel.
Yeah.
I don't really make that separation, except where it's just, you don't have to do so much research for the magic, or at least you didn't. Now I have to keep an eye on what I've written now.
Have you written Newton's laws of magic yet?
I know. Well, he didn't make the laws. He synthesized it. You see, it's the Newtonian synthesis, because otherwise it's disrespectful for the people that came before him.
Yeah.
See, I'm very modern. He's very modern. My characters are now about that sort of thing.
She's waving her hand about. I'm
Oh
scared.
no, because I'm just fascinated. Because I'm thinking, so it's organic. I mean, for both of you, these things happen. So, Gail, okay, Abi, if I can ask you, when you are in the Aether Chronicle writing, and presumably you get lost in that time and space, is it a disappointment when you come back to the cold reality?
Well, it depends what's bringing me back. If it's the cat sitting beside me shouting at me because she wants feeding again, or opening the door, that's a bit annoying. But no, because when you're being a writer, and when you're in the real world. I do occasionally have conversations with myself, particularly when I'm driving, and my husband and my daughter will go, "What did you say, Mum?" It's like, "Nothing, wasn't me." Because I know I'd have to explain a huge conversation that two characters are having through my one mouth. And it's just like, no, just leave it.
Yeah.
But no, generally speaking, I'm a writer when I'm working and when I'm writing. When I'm not, I'm usually still thinking about writing. But it's the real world. You have to deal with it. You just get up and do it. But I am what I call a martini writer. It is literally any time, any place, anywhere. I'll do whatever, because I do have children. I do have a husband. I have worked for lots of years. To give you an idea of the kind of my life, I was 8 months pregnant with my son when I started my degree, part-time, working full-time, studying part-time. And I was 6 months pregnant with our daughter when I finished. So just expand that. That's what my life is like.
Yeah.
See, I can't do that. I've spent my entire life insulating myself from having to do any work whatsoever. Because I don't consider writing work, you see. And I hate work. I hate being told what to do. I hate having specific hours.
Yeah.
And so I've spent most of my life trying to avoid. And the great thing about being successful as a writer is I've managed to get someone to do the cleaning, someone to do the organising, someone to do all the other stuff.
I'll introduce you to my husband. He does the cleaning.
See, yeah, a lot of, I'm not the only person. If you look at a lot of successful writers, there's nearly always, especially in the 19th century, a spouse that was bloody doing the swan thing the whole bloody time. You know, like Tolstoy, the famous story I love about Tolstoy, his wife wrote out his manuscripts because his handwriting was terrible.
Yeah.
And then he decided, he got this idea that he was going to go and live a life of poverty, and she just went, "Fuck off!"
Not doing it.
I like being a countess, thank you very much. So if you want to freaking go off and life of poverty in the countryside,
Come on, you're right.
That's your bit, yeah.
you can get somebody else to scribble out your work.
No, I think I'm actually a workaholic. I think that's why I do two different genres, and why, as you said earlier, I've organised this festival. Why did I organise this festival? But it's hard work, but it's fun, and I can't sit and do nothing. It sounds really weird, but I can't.
I can.
have to be.
I'm really good at it.
The,
I'm one of England's finest lazy people.
the closest I get to sitting and doing nothing is we have a camper van, and we love our camper van, is going out in the camper van because my husband drives, and I sit in the next to him, and then we put a certain Mr. Ben, I'm going to say this wrong now, Aaronovitch
No, perfectly fine.
and we sit and listen to, we've listened literally to the whole of the Peter Grant stories on Audible while driving somewhere in our camper van. And we love it. And that's the closest I come to doing nothing, because my brain is engaged imagining everything.
I do that a lot, but I do that with other writers rather than me, obviously. I know, it's like, what I really
That would
like
be a
is,
bit egotistical,
for example,
actually.
I fell upon the Michael Palin diaries, because that's 30 hours of me not doing anything except listening to Michael Palin. It was great, and I just like, oh, look, he moved into my area, and so therefore he's talking about places that I used to hang out in the 70s and 80s, and I'm like, oh, I know that place. So, but I'm like I said, I'm very lazy. I'm very slow and I'm very lazy, and I find that affluence has taken away most of life's problems, really. So
It would really, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I did, it's like,
So Ben, just that question that I asked Abi, for you, in not having to have those structures and things like that, do you stay within the world that you've created?
well, it's mostly the characters. I always have this, like, if you imagine there's a kind of green room, right, that I always imagine as being just behind the wall behind me when I'm writing. And it's full of my characters who occasionally bang on the wall and demand to be in the next book.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I have. And you have ideas, and they just sit in the green room going, oh, I want to be in this book. Especially the bloody foxes at the moment, who I'm trying not have overrun all the books, you see. I'm trying to have the foxes not take over. And they keep going, oh, we could do this, we could do that. They're like bloody Bottom from Midsummer Night's Dream. Like, get out.
Yeah. But can I just say as a reader, though, that, because I listened on the way down to Amongst Our Weapons, and I was really disappointed to have to get out of the car and to be back in the, but then I came to the festival and there was magic again. But you have that ability to transport a reader into a totally different space.
Definitely.
And just waiting for a voice from somebody that, maybe one of the river
I wish
goddesses.
I could tell you how it was done, because then I could flog that as well.
Yeah, that would be an elixir we'd all buy.
Yeah, I think there's not a writer who wouldn't like a kind of glug something that went like that. I don't know. You just sit down and you look at the screen and then you type stuff. It's basically as basic as that. You have ideas, and the real difference between someone who becomes a writer and someone who doesn't become a writer is just the writing down stuff.
Well, you asked about if I ever take it in. There's one instance when I did, and I'm going to discuss to you all now because it's as G.B. Williams. There is a part of one of my books, I won't tell you which because you'll never read it, where the main protagonist goes into a house that is filthy and neglected, and she goes up and she finds one neglected child alive and one baby dead with flies on it. And I have described the smell of that house. I had to stop writing that scene halfway through because I had other things that I had to do. I had that I kept saying to Jack, what is that smell? What's going on? That smell stuck with me for 2 weeks until I finished the scene. And it was quite a relief to finish the scene. But that's the only time that what I'm writing has completely
It's
taken
come with
over.
you. Yeah.
I play sad music for that kind of stuff.
Really?
I have a soundtrack of sad songs. Whenever I need to write a sad scene, I have a soundtrack of sad songs. Put me in the kind of,
Every writer has to cry.
Every writer's agony. But Ben, in Amongst Our Weapons, so the first body is found in the London Silver Vaults, yeah? I've never been, but you can go visit. Yeah.
There's a shop. You basically go down there and look at silver until your eyes bleed. That's how much silver's down there. It's just ridiculous.
How did it set off in life though? As a
It's
space?
very simple. My agent phoned me up. He said, "There's this place called the Silver Vault," and he went, "Really?" He said, and he sent me a link. I thought, "My God, I've lived here all my life. I didn't know that existed." So I went down and looked at it, walked into it, and went, "Fuck me, I have to kill someone in here." And I do that a lot. I mean, I was, I came to Aberystwyth and went, ooh, someone could go straight into the sea there. That would be.
Yeah,
You got a funicular. I mean, the potential of that funicular is really. I mean, the timing, who went up it and when, you know.
we're always doing things like that. It's like, Gail, what's wrong with you? You could kill someone there with that, and you could put a body there, because we do geocaching as well. So, and I read a lot of forensics, so I keep telling people that I know how to kill you, not be traced, and I can hide the bodies.
But don't you think that possibility, is it not shrinking as, is it not?
No, if you want to be a serial killer, right,
Yeah.
become a farmer.
Oh,
Right? Because, no, I swear, you have access to heavy equipment,
Yeah.
you have access to unsupervised land, you have access to chemicals, you have access to things that can chop bodies up. I mean, come on. And you have a shotgun. I mean, seriously.
And pigs,
oh, pigs,
yeah, and
If you're
pigs,
a pig farmer,
yeah.
you don't even have to bury people. You just stick them in the, you know.
is this being recorded? Is it going to go out for public consent?
Actually, yes.
I mean, if you think about it, any farmer could be driving along with a tractor, with a
Sorry,
trailer,
Yeah.
trailer with something wrapped up in palm oil in the back, and you just go, hello.
Do you know there is actually a way that they can discover hidden bodies like that?
Well, you can get cadaver dogs, but they also have access to.
No, well, apparently, if you do, what's it called, the heat seeking.
Oh, right, yes.
If you're in a heat seeking, they were doing a geographical survey somewhere up in one of the islands of Scotland, and apparently they just kept finding all these squares, these oblongs of heat, and they didn't know what it was. And when they got to the ground, nothing shows there. But what they did is they dug a couple up, and they were human remains. There was an old burial ground. All of the stones were gone, but they could still see the decomposing
that would have made
walls.
some episodes of Time Team a lot shorter.
But it has fairly recent burial ground. But,
Oh, that's good. No,
yeah.
because now you've got like cold cases, like someone's doing a geographical survey somewhere, and they like find these
They find the
bodies,
body.
dig them up, and they're like all these people who went
No, you
missing,
can't steal
like,
that idea.
20 years ago.
Well, actually, to be fair, I think somebody else has already written it.
But you can always, the ideas are ideas, and you can always reformulate them, can't you? I mean, to kill someone is to kill someone. It's how you do it and where you do it, and in,
It's why you do it as well.
and why as well. So yeah.
Well, there's basically like the two approaches to murder in fiction, right? There's some people who are really interested in the psychology of the killer, and I'm not very interested in the psychology of the killer. When I'm watching a TV series and they find out who did it, I don't watch the bit at the end where they sit them down and they say why. I usually fast forward through that because I'm not interested. They caught them, I'm not interested.
That's fine, yeah.
Right? So I come at it from the kind of like the procedural. That's why I'm naturally a procedural writer, because I come at it from the procedural thing. And I say, right, how do they catch them? And I just complicate it with magic because, I'm perverse that way. But other people are very interested in the psychology of criminals and things like that, and they come at it from a completely different direction, which I respect. But
That's one of the reasons why I write steampunk as well, because I don't have to worry about the procedure, because back in the 1800s, there wasn't a lot of it. So, you didn't necessarily have fingerprints, you didn't have the psychological profiling. And more importantly, it didn't have mobile phones, so my DCI can't phone up and say, oh, go and arrest this person for that reason, while I'm still looking to see if I can find some footprints. So there is a good reason to avoid writing now.
you don't even have to go back to the Victorian era. I'm watching Columbo, and he keeps using people's phones.
And another thing.
Yeah, no, but he keeps using people's phones. And I looked it up, and there wasn't even in America in those days. There wasn't in 1970, early 1970s. They didn't even have 911.
Oh, right.
No, you had to phone the local police
The separate,
department.
yeah,
You called
yeah.
the operator, and you said, "Put me through to the police."
Wow.
I know. I was like, you think of these things as being ubiquitous, but actually,
But you're getting into a whole world of hurt when you look at the whole American policing and
Yes,
law and
yes.
order. It's very complicated.
and
It's
5,000 of them.
yeah, there's
5,000
just
different departments.
yeah. I can never get the whole federal, state, local. There's something under state, and I can't even remember what county. I think.
Yeah, you have county. No, you have county, and then you have local sheriffs. That's the county level, and it varies from state to state anyway.
Yeah. And there is at least one sheriff somewhere in America that is a dog. So this is why I don't write in America.
There was one which I used in a book because it was too tasty. There was one sheriff who would let you buy into being a deputy, and then you'd get a permit to carry a gun and a badge, and then you could fly with your gun on a plane because you had a badge. And I just thought that just says everything you need to know about policing there.
Yeah. We'll stick to
Also, because of this thing called the disbursement program, to get rid of surplus military equipment, they're all armed to the bloody teeth with ridiculous sort of things like armoured cars and rifles and flak jackets, and you sit there going, you don't need that.
That's one of the things, again, that I like about writing in the UK. I'm not somebody who is into guns. I know quite a few writers, usually male, I will say, who know everything there is about a gun, how to take it apart, oil it, and do the rest of it. So I don't, and ballistics is terrifying. So I don't tend to use all of that.
And yet, I'm thinking about the technology of the time that you set your stories in, and I just wondered, did you have a favourite invention in your books?
I do actually, there is an ugly badge mentioned in Shades, and basically somebody has figured out how to use this magic to mind control. And so they are trying to mind control various people. And there is a exhibition. So people of certain wealth and power are invited to this private exhibition. And my heroine wears this ugly badge. And she doesn't know why she's wearing it, other than the guy who dies at the beginning of the book, whose murder she solves, said to her, wear this, promise me you will never take this off until you realise that you can. And so she goes to this private exhibition, and people around her start behaving strangely. And she realises that that's the start of the mind control, and that's how they're getting to people. But because she's wearing this ugly brooch, she's fine. So that's actually my favourite. There's loads of other inventions that are more powerful and do better things, but that's my favourite.
Wow. I'm just like, I think they've got me. I need the badge. It's like,
I could put my mind. I like the idea of doing a steampunk. I've just got this idea for a steampunk story.
I'll steal it.
No, you won't. Mine. I tell you, no, you can if you want. And basically, the idea is that it's a magic punk. It's a magic steampunk one.
Yeah.
In that the steam trains are all powered by steam demons. So basically, everything is driven by steam engines, driven by little hot demons that live in the...
vision now. Do you remember the storyteller, Jim Henson's
Yes.
The Storyteller? Do you remember those little imps?
Yes.
And he grabs one by the foot.
Yeah.
I have now got this image of a steam train with all of those running around like a...
Well, that's a good way. I quite like that. But mine are elemental because I came up with the title first, which was The Steam Demon's Daughter. And you go, oh, what's it about? I have no idea, but it's a good title. I'm going with that.
The Steam Demon's Daughter.
That sounds good, doesn't it?
I like it. Now, we've been shown the 15-minute mark, so please, we'll be coming to you for questions. But I've got a few more, if I may, because if that's all right. And then we'll open up to the audience. Architecture, Ben, and it figures so much. I mean, you take us on a tour, not just magical, but of the buildings in London. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and if I were to have the chance to go to London, and I didn't have a lot of time, which buildings would you send me to for what you consider their architectural beauty?
Well, quite a lot of them you can just stand there because they impose themselves on you. So I like the Shard. Peter doesn't, but I do. Well, there's the Shard. There's St Pancras Hotel, which is very useful because you'd be quite close to there when you got into Euston.
I used that as a picture to describe something because that was my inspiration.
Yeah, I
it
mean,
is
it's a
gorgeous.
fine piece of Gothic, baronial Gothic kind of madness. Likewise, I don't know. I don't really think of architecture in those kind of terms. There's a very nice, what do you call them, house, 1920s house that turns up in a lot of Agatha Christie novelizations in Hampstead, which is basically a kind of communal living house. It's very nice. There's some interesting Bauhaus stuff, but I don't really think of architecture in those terms. Peter's interest in architecture was sparked by the fact that I was writing a book set in London, and if you're writing a book set in the countryside and you don't know what the trees are called, your description of the countryside goes like this. It was green, with some green stuff. At the bottom was some brown things with some more green stuff on top. If you see what I mean, if you don't know your architecture, if you don't know the terminology of your architecture, then that's what your description of a city is like. It was grey, it was made out of concrete, blah, blah, blah. And in third person, you can authority just put that information in, right? You can say, this is what, but in the first person, you have to have a reason for the person to know the architecture. And I actually have to look this stuff up. I don't know this stuff off by heart.
Oh, I assumed that Peter's interest in architecture was yours.
No, never, and he's a really good example of why you shouldn't give your bloody character an interest you don't have.
Have you become interested in architecture from it?
I mean, I've got a great deal of knowledge, but like most information that you acquire for a book, it goes in one ear, then by the time you finish the book, and then like 6 months later, people are asking you about it, and you can't remember anything.
But is that the same with jazz?
No, with jazz I do because I don't like jazz very much. And I put the jazz in to annoy Rebus and Resnick and a whole clutch of annoying detectives who all love jazz. Yes. I thought, I'm going to write a character who knows more about jazz than they do, but doesn't like it very much. And I just, that was, and Lee Child's character likes bloody jazz as well. It was such a cliche that I did that. But I have a friend who's a mad Andrew Cartmel, who is a mad jazz nut. So I just will put a line in, because he's also my punctuation monkey. And so I just put a line in. It says, he couldn't tell the difference for, open brackets, asterisks, some jazz star who you can't really tell the difference from, from another British 1920s jazz star. And that works for me, you see. And he came up with a whole history, like Peter's dad's career. He came up with Peter's dad's career and everything for me. So yeah, always find someone who's knowledgeable and cheap and use their information.
But I love what you said, that sense of, so you give a character a big interest in one thing and another that you're really not that bothered about, and then, to maintain that. I don't want to say...
There's also a petrol head, which I get from watching Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah.
I'm sure you changed something about the Jag. It went from a V8 to something else.
No, it's an inline six.
Inline six, but it was something else.
No, because the terminology is different, apparently. In America, it's called something else. I think it's called the inline six, and then in Britain, it's called something else, and I got that wrong. And I got one of those letters that says, I think you'll find that the Jaguar Mark II.
Oh, right, okay.
I love those people, by the way. Yes, you are one of those people. I think you're brilliant.
I just thought, I don't know enough about vehicles to know whether this is right.
I've decided to take the Terry Pratchett line on continuity.
Which is?
It's all continuity from a certain point of view.
Do it like that.
The continuity is whether or not the readers enjoy it.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of readers, if you don't mind, can we open it up to the audience? Yeah, please, roving mic person. Oh, John, another star of the whole session.
Yes, this poor soul is the man who has to put up with me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Is there a question from the audience? Oh, there's lots of questions. Yeah, brilliant. The lady, John, yeah.
Just a quick one for Ben. Most of your writing set in London with a sojourn to the countryside, but is Peter ever going to investigate in any other your UK city, like Leeds or Hull or somewhere?
I'm writing one set in Aberdeen as we speak.
That's Scotland, though. I was thinking more, the northern.
Picky.
Yeah. I'm being
That's really north.
No, because after spending like 5 or 6 different visits to Aberdeen, 7.5 hours on the train both ways, right? I've sworn never to go outside London again, ever. Right up to the point where I decided to set something in Wales. So,
yeah.
But that might be another country one, because that's an Abigail book, so that might be set in the countryside.
Thank you.
The gentleman in front of her had a question, I think.
John, he'll come back to you.
Sorry, another question for Ben.
Oh, they're all going to be for Ben. I know my pace.
I love the idea of the Signa and the Vestigia, and I wondered where you got that.
I don't know, I needed some way for magic to work. I had like two principles. One, I couldn't break the laws of thermodynamics. And two, I wanted it to be something that everyone could do. So it couldn't be like an innate ability that somebody had that nobody else had. So I don't know, I just thought about when you walk into a house and it feels kind of strange, or you do something and you go somewhere and it feels kind of strange. I thought, what if there's actually that you're picking up signals from somewhere else, but they're quite faint and it's difficult to differentiate between your random brain, rubbish that goes on in your brain all the time. And I just kind of went with it. And then it just, as when you sit down and you actually start writing something, it sort of makes it concrete. And once it becomes concrete, you're kind of stuck with it. And that's always a very dangerous thing when you're writing a series. It's like, I've got unicorns now, I'm stuck with them, or foxes or anything like that. You're kind of stuck with them.
But to add on to that, Caro Ramsey was here last night, and she actually said there is a mythology about, not granite, granite's too hard, limestone, I think she said, that actually does hold memory. And so, it will, because it's porous,
Yes.
it will absorb those memories, and that certain people can attune to them. So it's not entirely without basis.
Good, because I'll claim that I researched that strongly before I wrote it.
Might check
That's why it was. It's the whole limestone theory, and I just nicked it.
I was going to say, make sure it was limestone she was talking about. Because
limestone makes sense because it's made of little animals.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah.
So that makes sense. Although in my world, granite is quite a good one, which is why I'm having fun in Aberdeen. Have you ever been to Aberdeen?
No, I want to.
It's an extraordinarily weird-looking city.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the Granite City.
The Granite City, yeah.
But basically,
you must know.
Yeah, my wife's from Aberdeen, yeah.
It's made by Victorians, and they basically said, we're going to make a standard Victorian city, but we're going to make it out of granite. So you get these terraces that are basically semi-detached to Victorian villas made out of what looks like concrete blocks, but are actually granite. And if you know how hard granite is to bloody work, you'll know that all those gargoyles and everything must have just taken...
Yeah, good skill. Yeah, definitely. I know there's another question on the front row. Joe. Yeah, thank you.
Hello both. Peter and Beverly's offspring, are you going to imbue them with any extra powers at some stage?
I have no idea. I don't have to worry about that for at least another 3 years. I don't really work like that. The only character whose arc has been clear from the start for me was Leslie, and that's only because I worked out what had happened, and then it kind of sprung into my mind.
I felt really sorry for Leslie with
You're
what
supposed to
you did
feel really sorry for
Yeah.
Leslie.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for Leslie. She doesn't feel sorry for bloody Leslie.
No.
Is she ever redeemable?
I don't know.
Well, of course she's redeemable. She's only doing what she needs to do for her. She's not evil. She is not evil. She's a woman in trouble.
I really didn't ever think of it in terms of evil and good in the sense. So the magic doesn't really work like that. It's not good magic and bad magic. There's just people that do things, bad things, and people who do good things for different reasons.
If magic is power, what you do
magic
with it
is just power.
Yeah.
So therefore, I didn't have that whole psychological, philosophical problem they get into in Star Wars, where they can't make up their minds whether it's people or some kind of cosmic force.
But you can tell that she's very much a woman alone, but that sequence when she actually reappears in amongst our weapons, there's
she
so much
wasn't
to her.
when I started the book, by the way.
But was she in the green room banging on saying,
Banging
you
on
need
the
to let me
bloody
in?
wall.
Oh, she's one you got out of the shed.
Yeah.
No, they have the shed is where the ideas are.
Oh, right,
The
okay.
green room is where the bloody characters live and complain constantly.
Is that where they come from? 'Cause I have this thing about characters who were not supposed to be main characters, who just come in and take over sometimes.
Oh, I hate them. They're freaking...
They're annoying, but they're good.
I've got like half a dozen characters, like Beverly Brooke, right? Yeah. Beverly Brooke's job was to open the door to her mum's house.
Not
That's
anymore.
all. When I wrote that first opening scene, Zach bloody Palmer, his job was to open the... I've stopped letting people open doors in my books because I'm so sick of the number of characters whose one job was to let them into the crime scene or something. Sarah Galid, Her job was to be, random second policeman on the left, right? I mean, Abigail Kamara, annoying teenager. That was like, in the credits, that's what she would have been, annoying teenager. And the next thing I know, the Foxes. That was a one-line joke at the end of one book.
Taken over. I love it.
And so I have loads of cases. I've got to the point, and because I'm not one of these people that kind of like murders swathes of his characters every so often.
Yeah.
Cough, J.R. Martin, cough. But they just accumulate. And so what happens is I'm writing a book, and there's something that needs to be done by a character. And if it's I can get one of them off the shelf, then it ends up being done by one of the characters. I needed someone to be interfering with something to get something. Leslie's like the obvious character for that. It's like putting her nose into where she's not supposed to.
Yeah. I wonder, can we squeeze in one more question? Yeah. Anybody else? Thank you.
One for Ben. We know obviously we've got authorities on magic in England and in Germany, so will Peter and Tobias perhaps ever meet?
I don't know. I was planning for them to meet. And then COVID got in the way. So I've got this mad book set in the Czech Republic where they all end up in the Czech Republic. So they all end up doing this case in the Czech Republic because the Czech authorities have called in the British, the Germans, and the Russians, and because of various political factions within the Czech Republic. But, that involves flying to bloody Czech Republic a lot and doing loads of research. So that was kind of kiboshed by COVID. I don't want to do a story where I say I must do this and then I must build a story around that. Mm-hmm. I like to have a story. So for all I know, I'll be sitting there writing a story and I'll get to a bit and it will go, who'd be really good for this particular role? That would be if Tobias turned up. Yeah. That would be really good for that role. And then I don't know when I start a book whether or not Tobias. I mean, he'd be fun, but I don't know. I'd quite like to write Peter from Tobias's point of view rather than Tobias from Peter's point of view, if you see what I mean. Mm. I think that would be more fun. I think because Tobias has got such a inferiority complex with regards to Peter. It'd be hilarious.
Yeah, from his point of view, Peter would be quite different from your standard reader's point of view. Yeah, which just goes to show that nobody's seen the same way by two different humans.
Although Vanessa would bloody fangirl him.
Well, on that note, because I think we're almost at time, I want to thank you, the audience, for being here this afternoon. Thank you so much, and thank you for the questions from the audience. Our authors will be heading to the Waterstones, to the pop-up shop. So whilst we take our time to get there, I wonder if you would do the honours of filling in one last panel questionnaire. The questionnaire should be on your seat. If you could do that for us, it's really helpful going forward for the next time that we can do this in real life. But it just remains for me to thank Ben Aaronovitch and Abi Barden. Thank you so much for our time together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacky.
Pleasure. Thank you.